Well, good morning, everyone. I am back at the podium a little sooner than I had expected, and I'm sure that given the short notice of this briefing and the fact that we're doing it all on a Sunday, you know what I'm about to tell you. Late yesterday evening, a case of COVID-19 was confirmed in the Isle of Man. First and foremost, I would like to emphasise that there is no cause for concern. The positive test result came from a resident who was in self-isolation, having recently returned to the island. This individual has been self-isolating alone at home for 7 days. The individual concerned has not been outside of their home during that time. They have told us that they have complied with all of the instructions issued to them on their return. They will now continue their self-isolation until we know that they pose no risk to others. It was sadly inevitable that COVID-19 would return to the island at some stage. We have said so on a number of occasions now, so we should not be disheartened by this. The robust processes and procedures we have in place have worked precisely as they were designed to do, meaning that this single case is contained and the risk to our community is extremely low. Our contact tracing team will of course work to ensure that there are no loose ends. But knowing what we know at this moment, the situation is as positive as we may have hoped. Work is now underway through our contact tracing team to identify and reach anyone who may have come into close contact with this person. Only those at high risk of exposure, that is someone who has been in close proximity to this person for longer than 15 minutes with no PPE, will be asked to self-isolate, and even then only as a precaution. While we can no longer technically say we have no cases on the island, we have no reason at present to think we have COVID in our community. And I want to make it clear that there will be no change in our approach to coronavirus at this stage. You are free to continue going about your daily lives as normal, and schools will resume on Wednesday. The rollout of optional Day 7 testing for returning residents, which I announced on Thursday, will still go live tomorrow as planned. The compassion and solidarity everyone on our island has shown throughout this pandemic has been an outstanding quality of our community's response. Today, one of our own is at home with the knowledge that they have tested positive for COVID, and they will undoubtedly be concerned. I am sure you will join me in wishing them the very best over the coming days and in thanking them for acting responsibly. It is by doing the right thing and following the rules in place that we will protect our community from the impact of a return of the virus. I will now hand over to Minister Ashford, who will say a few words. David.
Thank you, Chief Minister. The first thing I want to say is we have made clear all along that this would be likely to happen, that we were likely to see more new cases like this. Unfortunately, with the virus going around the world, it is inevitable. Just to reinforce some of the points that the Chief Minister has very eloquently made, at the moment there is no reason for concern. It is a case in isolation. It is someone who has been following strict protocols around isolation. They have already been interviewed by the contact tracing team, and it's confirmed that they have been following those strict protocols, and the system has worked exactly as we planned it to. Contact tracing has also interviewed the person about people they may have come into contact with, and at the moment in time, no high-risk contacts have been identified. I just want to quickly touch as well on the island's COVID-free status, because I know, and I've seen over the last couple of days, there's been some debate on social media around what COVID-free actually means. Well, COVID-free has generally been interpreted internationally and by the media internationally as meaning you have no active community transmission cases. So in other words, you are local infection free, not that you have cases at all from travel and quarantine. So by that definition at the moment, the island still remains COVID-free. So if we use New Zealand as an example, that is one that was very much held up around the world, they were quoted as having been for 102 days COVID-free prior to their community transmission restarting. Over those 102 days, the actual case count in New Zealand rose by 75, from 1,504 to 1,579. As cases were identified from people who had travelled or were in a quarantine situation, but they had not gone out into the community, but they were still classified as COVID-free. If you take the wider definition of COVID-free being defined as having no cases whatsoever, including those in quarantine or self-isolation, then New Zealand was actually only COVID-free for 8 days between the 8th of June and the 16th of June. So by the definition that has generally been accepted that says that you are COVID-free of local infection, then the Isle of Man still remains COVID-free by that definition. But I think the key point to make is at this point there is no need for people to be concerned, but people should, as always, remain vigilant. Thank you, Chief Minister.
Well, thank you very much, David, and I'm now happy to take questions from the media. And first we have Sam Turton from Isle of Man newspapers. Good morning, Sam. Moramai.
Moramai, Chief Minister. I just wonder if we could start with, obviously we wish the person well has tested positive. Do we have, obviously you'll have the details, could we have the details on how they arrived back on the island? Was it by ferry or was it by plane? And have they only been in the UK or have they been further afield?
Right, well, I have to be very careful, Sam, with data protection and giving details of the person. I think I can say that they flew into the island. The flight only obviously had a small number of people on, and they were all wearing face masks. So that's probably as much as I can give. I don't know, David, if you feel there's anything more we can add to that.
The only thing I would add is, of course, with our strict border protocols at the moment, all of the people on those flights would have been isolating as well, because when they come back into the island, everyone has to isolate. So everyone on that flight would already be in isolation.
Thank you. And just secondly, I just think it might, maybe with this being the first case that we've had in a long time, would you be able to just explain, now this person has tested positive, what happens for them from their point of view for their isolation period?
Well, Sam, they'll be monitored. They'll have to remain in isolation now for the 14-day period, and our team will keep in contact with them. Our track tracing team will be contacting them, well, have already contacted them, and will be working with them to go through anyone they might have spoken to. I don't know, David, if you want to expand on that.
Yep, so same as happened during the main part of the pandemic. Once someone tests positive, the 14 days resets. So their positive test was from last night, so their 14 days is already begins again from last night. So the isolation they've already done isn't taken into account. They have to isolate for 14 days from that positive test being returned.
Okay, thanks very much, Sam. We now move on to Leanne Cook from 3FM. Good morning, Leanne. Moramai.
Good morning. Good morning, Chief Minister. I hope you're well. My first question is actually going to be regarding schools. Obviously, they're due to open this week with attendance being compulsory. Can you confirm if this will still be the case?
Absolutely. Schools, it's business as usual. So schools carry on. We carry on as normal, as if this case hadn't happened. Effectively, it's not in the community. It's textbook in a way. Someone has gone away, sadly caught the illness, has come back, they've followed all the rules, and as a result we've spotted it. It's not in the community, and I think David and myself have for a time now been warning people that we fully expect this sort of case to happen, and if it has to happen, and it has happened, I'm delighted that the person has been so responsible, and as a result, this isn't a case in the community. So if it was in the community, then it might be a different answer. But this has been caught whilst the person has been isolating, and therefore it really is business as usual for our schools, for our work, and for the 7-day isolation, which will be starting tomorrow. Thank you, Leanne. And your second question?
And my second question, I know you've mentioned in regards to contact tracing, could you give us a rough ballpark of how many residents are due to be contacted?
Right. I don't know, David, if you want to give those details.
Well, at the moment, Leanne, no one has actually been identified as a high-risk contact. My understanding is there is only one low-risk contact that has actually been identified. But obviously, contact tracing is ongoing. This was only identified late last night, but that's the figures I have to hand at the moment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leanne. We now move on to Josh Stokes from ITV Granada. Good morning, Josh. Moramai.
Good morning, Chief Minister. My first question is similar to Leanne's, actually. In regards to contact tracing, can you go into any detail into what will happen to those people who travelled with the infected individual, whether that be on the flight or their journey to where they were isolating? Have they been contacted at all, and will their self-isolation be extended in any way?
I'll let David answer that.
Yeah, in relation to the people who were on the flight with the person, obviously they are already in isolation, Josh, because basically that's our border policy at the moment anyway. So unless someone actually starts to show symptoms, then they won't necessarily have to isolate past the isolation period they've already got.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, technically, I suppose, Josh, they're entitled to be tested on Monday if they've been 7 days in isolation, and so they will have the test anyway. So it's fully under control.
Okay, thank you. My second question is to the Health Minister, please. I've got the documents up in front of me detailing the 3-day averages and what the infection rate would need to be spreading to cause any kind of change. Are you able to just go over this document in particular again and that particular part? Because I'm sure people will be concerned about what will happen if this escalates, and are you sticking to that document and those plans?
We most certainly are sticking to that document, the Stay Safe document that was issued, and I think it's page 26 of the document that you're referring to, Josh, which has the 3-day averages in. I need to point out the 3-day averages relate to community transmission. As the Chief Minister and myself have just stated, this is at the moment an isolated case of someone who has travelled in, been in isolation. Our 3-day averages are based on community transmission. At the moment, we have no community transmission.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Josh. We now move on to Tim Glover from Manx Radio. Good morning, Tim. Moramai.
Good morning, Moramai, Chief Minister and Health Minister. Did the person, I just want to confirm this, develop symptoms while they were self-isolating? Because obviously the 7-day test regime doesn't start till tomorrow. So did they specifically request the test as they were feeling unwell?
Right, again, Tim, I have to be careful with data protection, so I will ask the Health Minister, who has the technical details on this, to give you an answer on that, Tim.
So what I can say, Tim, is there is a set pathway in place for certain individuals where they have always been able to be tested after 7 days for certain circumstances. The individual was on one of those pathways. They were asymptomatic, they were tested appropriately, and that's when the positive result has come back.
And can I ask what Guernsey's reaction's been? We're getting quite a lot of comment about the air bridge. Is there no change there?
Well, obviously, my team have spoken to Guernsey this morning. I will be speaking with the Chief Minister of Guernsey on Wednesday. But because we had both expected this to happen on our respective islands. If it had been in the community, it might have been a different cause for concern, but there's no change at this moment in time to the air bridge with Guernsey.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tim. Next we have Alex Bell from the BBC. Good morning, Alex. Moramai.
Yeah, good morning, Moramai. Kind of a sigh of relief to hear that this individual had been self-isolating, and not just that, but self-isolating alone that you mentioned. Would you be sighing the same sigh of relief if this person had been self-isolating with others?
Well, yes, obviously the safest thing to do is self-isolate on your own. But if you look at the data, if memory serves me correct, Alex, that we've had from doing the tests for the antibody, I think 86% of people who have isolated with somebody who has COVID-19 have not caught COVID-19. A further 8% then caught COVID-19 outside of their household, and therefore that only left 6% of people who actually caught COVID-19 from someone in their household who was isolating. And I think those sort of statistics should reassure people. I don't know, David, if you'd like to expand on that.
Yeah, thank you, Chief Minister. The first thing I've got to say, Alex, is you've got to remember what self-isolation in the home is. Self-isolation in the home is very, very clear. It means you should be away from family members. So if you use shared places such as a bathroom, it should be cleaned down thoroughly after each use. It doesn't mean you should be mixing with your household during that period. And this, if anything, goes on to prove why that advice is in place. But also, there's very strict protocols around self-isolation. So, for instance, if the person had been in a household with other people, at this point, when a positive test return, the whole household then has to self-isolate. The household gets locked down. So there's very strict protocols in that regard that are still in place.
I think it illustrates the absolute need for people to be responsible still, doesn't it? Because we've had a number of people too facing penalties for breaking self-isolation. Should this serve as a wake-up call now to those who maybe aren't following the rules, having come back home?
Absolutely. I cannot stress enough, Alex, and thank you very much for raising that incredibly important point. This has worked. The systems that we've put in place have worked. This person has respected the quarantine, the isolation rules and regulations, and as a result, there is incredibly low risk to the community. And if everyone else acts as responsible as this person, then we will be fine as a community going forward. But I hope this is a wake-up call to all of those people who've been away, that have come back, who have maybe been tempted not to follow the rules, that this is what can happen. You may not know you have it, but you can be spreading it. So, yes, it's certainly a wake-up call, Alex, and I thank you very much for raising that key point that we all must respect the quarantine process. Right, and last but not least, we have Chris Cave from Energy FM. Good morning, Chris. Moromai.
Good morning, Chief Minister. This is just one case, and you said it's no time to panic. I'm just wondering if there are any plans in place to introduce restrictions on where Manx residents can travel to try and prevent them going to so-called virus hotspots if we are to see a spike in cases.
Right, well, that's a very good question, Chris. At this moment in time, we feel that if people follow the 7-day quarantine properly, then the percentage of risk is significantly reduced, and that's why we brought in this system. David, I'm sure you'd like to expand on that.
Yeah. From my personal point of view, Chris, I'm not sure the red, amber, green rating for countries necessarily works because the risk of virus in different countries is changing all the time. So we've seen what's happening with the UK, where countries are going on and off the green list. A very interesting stat that I was looking at the other day is our counterparts down in the Channel Island, Jersey. Since the 1st of July, they've actually been recording their travel cases of people who've tested positive for COVID-19 and where they've come from. And a very interesting stat is that 63% since the 1st of July of those travellers who've tested positive for COVID-19 have actually come from green-rated countries. So I'm not sure that necessarily doing a green, amber and red actually adds anything to the policies we have in place. We already have very robust policies in place, including self-isolation policies, and those will be continuing.
Yeah, if I can just say, Chris, before I take your next question, this is a personal comment from me, that I respect, we opened up our borders to allow our own people to go away, to go and see family and friends. Other than the air bridge to Guernsey, I personally cannot understand why anyone would want to go on holiday at this moment in time. Yes, to see your loved ones, I understand the stress that's caused an awful lot of people not to be able to travel, but I'm just asking people to be responsible, and if we're all responsible, we will come through this well. We're coming through this well at the moment. I see no need for that to change. And your next question, Chris.
Yeah, just finally, we've been hearing for quite some time that a new case in the Isle of Man is inevitable. How surprising is it from your point of view and your strategy in general dealing with this crisis that it's taken this long for COVID-19 to make its way back to the Isle of Man?
Yeah, I suppose we've always said, David and myself have said on a number of occasions when we've been doing these press conferences, that we expect cases to come back to the island when you have people going away. And inevitably, it was going to happen. We have had a good run, 108 days. That said, our run continues because it's not in the community. It was always going to be coming back with people. Once you leave the island, there's a chance you're going to bring it back. But by following the rules, the procedures that we've put in place, it's in isolation. It's not going to spread around the island, and therefore the island in our community is still free of COVID. That's what we've been planning for. And we have had a good run, and long may it continue that we do not have it in the community.
Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you all very much for your questions. Throughout this pandemic, our community has done everything that has been asked of it in order to protect our island. Whilst today's announcement should not cause concern, it serves as a reminder that we cannot let our guard down, and that we all have a duty to be responsible by sticking to the basics. Now, I know you know what they are, but please bear with me if I say them one more time. If you have any symptoms of COVID-19, a temperature, a cough, or a loss of taste or smell, then you must self-isolate immediately and call 111 between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. for advice and to arrange a test. If you cough or sneeze, catch it in a tissue or in the crook of your elbow. Kill it by using hand sanitizer, washing your hands and sanitizing surfaces, and remember to bin used tissues. Wash your hands regularly and thoroughly for at least 20 seconds. I know this news is not what any of us would have wanted, but in true Manx fashion, we will pick ourselves up, dust ourselves down, and move forward resiliently as an island. That's all for this morning. My thanks for your time, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your Sunday.